Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hoops HQ show. Seth Davis with Andy Katz. It is March. You can feel the energy in the air. You can feel the energy on the show. Andy, great to be with you. We're going to be joined a little bit later in the show by Jay Bilas of ESPN talking about the NCAA tournament and expansion and all kinds of big picture topics related to March Madness. First, Andy, let's kind of take a big picture look at where we are in the sport right now. A couple of really interesting results last week and then over the weekend. The big UConn St. John's game, which we both talked about last week. We both thought UConn could win the game. I don't think either of us thought they were going to win by more than 30. St. John's absolutely embarrassed, and then St. John's does the same thing to Villanova. And then Florida with a big-time statement win over Arkansas at home. It was never a close game. What do you see? And, of course, Arizona obliterating Kansas at home. We had Michigan winning at Illinois. We had Duke destroying Virginia. So where do you see the top tier of teams in college basketball right now? Who would be on your championship tier?
Well, let me just add this, and that is we all love Cinderella. We all love upsets. And I think we're going to see carnage for a lot of teams that are in tiers sort of 2 and below. But I don't see that happening in the top tier. And to me, the top tier, there are 5 teams, not 4, but 5. And I really believe that we're going to get a Final Four of that 5. And maybe that sounds like I'm Mr. Chalk, but I think there's going to be just a lot of upsets and, and results that go against some of these brand names early, but not the 5 of Duke, Michigan, Arizona, UConn, and Florida. Those 5 over the last couple of weeks have really separated themselves. I know UConn lost to Creighton in the middle of, the sort of the last 2 weeks, and that was a bit of an anomaly. What they did to St. John's, that's the UConn that I think we will see going forward here. What Florida did to Arkansas, what Michigan did at Illinois. I mean, that was as good a victory as Michigan has had all season. And then, of course, what Duke has done, not just to Michigan, but then to their closest rival this season in the ACC in Virginia. All incredibly impressive.
I am concerned that we could have another situation in the NCAA tournament where you don't have those Cinderella upsets, which doesn't really bother me, but I don't like people trying to, turn that into a narrative that somehow, NIL and the transfer portal has caused that to happen. I just think we have a year where we have a lot of strength at the top. I still think
it's Duke. Can I push back on one thing with that?
Duke, Michigan, and Arizona. Yeah, go ahead real quick.
Well, but let me ask you this. Are you okay? Does it fit your narrative of Cinderella if we have Troy beat, a Wisconsin, or, Liberty take down, you name it,
Purdue.
Texas Tech,
right.
I mean, those are still Cinderella upsets. They just may not get to the Final Four.
No, I agree.
Think we're still going to see stuff like that.
You mentioned Texas Tech. I think we need to throw some flowers at Grant McCasland, who, last week we talked about, John Shire being your pick for National Coach of the Year. I'm still a little partial to Fred Hoiberg, but what Grant McCasland is doing with Texas Tech, let's remind everybody, and nobody push back on this, on the midseason bracket reveal from the selection committee, Keith Gill, the chairman of the committee, said they knocked Texas Tech down a seed line because JT Toppin got hurt, which seemed reasonable at the time. They beat Kansas State and Cincinnati. Okay, not so great. They went into Iowa State and dominated the Cyclones in Hilton Coliseum. And, Christian Anderson had 31 points in the win over Kansas State. But they had a much more balanced attack there. So the fact that they're still winning, remember they came back to beat Duke when they were having all kinds of injuries and foul trouble. He's had no bench and now losing as All-American. What are your thoughts on Texas Tech and the job he's doing?
Yeah, I saw them in December, and I was wowed by Christian Anderson. Remember, Christian Anderson was part of the German national team in the FIBA tournament. They lost the gold medal game to the U.S. this past summer. So he's been on the scene, flying a little under the radar, but he's one of the best lead guards in the country, without question. They just don't get the national pub that they deserve. But yes, there's no question that he's done an unbelievable job and should be in consideration for National Coach of the Year. And this is a great point for the committee that, they've earned back that top 4 line seed, maybe a 3, Maybe they could get through 2. Who knows if they just keep winning? But the good news for Texas Tech is they had time and games ahead of them to prove to the committee, hey, we're not just one guy here, even though he's, the reigning Big 12 Player of the Year.
Yeah, I agree. I think when they get into that committee room, I don't think committees should discuss Toppin at all because they've proven that they're just as good without him in terms of the results, and that's what they didn't have at the bracket reveal. Okay, interesting news broke late on Sunday night. USC announced that Chad Baker-Mazara is not going to be part of the program. Now, Baker-Mazara is he's a character. Well-known guy. He's old. I want to say what? He's 26, 27 years old. 26 years old. Started his career at Duquesne, spent a year in junior college, went to San Diego State, academic casualty at San Diego State, lost another year, played 2 seasons at Auburn, and then a 5th year at USC. So that's why he's as old as he is, because he spent a couple years outside Division I. He's a very, very talented player. He's always been a volatile personality, technical foul type of kid. He's had some serious injury issues, and he had an injury issue apparently in their game against Nebraska, came out of the game, sat away from the bench. It just, the optics of that didn't look good, not least because USC's on the bubble trying to get into the tournament. They got embarrassed at home against Nebraska. What's your take on this situation with Baker-Mazara and how it impacts USC's ability to play its way back onto the right side of the bubble?
So I was with USC in Maui, and he kind of pulled this stunt, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed talking to him. So I want to put that out there. But yeah, he did this in one of the games in Maui, and it was the game that Rodney Rice got hurt. He sort of just disappeared for a good stretch of the first half at the end of the bench, and no one quite knew why. He sort of just took himself out. Then Rodney Rice gets hurt, injures his shoulder, and at halftime, Eric Musselman told me after that he'd gone in and said, hey, we need you. Rice is hurt. And then Chad came out and was great in the second half. He ends up being the MVP of the Maui Invitational. They lose Rice for the season. Elijah Renas can't come back till almost February. And then Chad gets hurt. So they've never been in sync, but they have needed his scoring, and he is an unbelievable scorer. And now without him, yeah, they're not going to make the NCAA tournament unless they go on some miraculous run. It's very disappointing what's happened, but I could see how Eric Musselman and the entire staff has sort of, at this point, said, you know what, we just can't have these distractions anymore.
That's going to wrap it up for this segment of Hoops HQ. I want to let everybody know we've got some very big news. Hoops HQ is giving away 10 complimentary annual subscriptions to Fubo. Each one of these annual subscriptions has a value of $888. So this giveaway is only open to paid Hoops HQ members. You got to sign up by 11 o'clock Eastern time on March 13th. So do this as soon as you can. And also Hoops HQ memberships are now for just a sweet $16 for your first year, more than 73% off the regular annual price. That's for subscription to Hoops HQ. So go to hoopshq.com/subscribe. Jay Bilas is next on the Hoops HQ show. And welcome back to the Hoops HQ show, everybody. Seth Davis with Andy Katz. So pleased to be joined by the great Jay Bilas. Jay's kind enough to come on the show during a very busy time of year. In return to that kindness, I will not pre-roll video of me and Jay on Cable 13 at Duke circa 1991. I'm getting younger. I'm getting older. He's getting younger. So I know it's impossible to predict the NCAA tournament, but do you foresee another tournament where we do see that distinction between the teams at the top and the potential Cinderellas? And do you see a connection between this new era of quasi-professionalism and revenue sharing that's driving that narrative?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think there are a lot of people out there who like to take one data point and turn it into a trend. You saw San Diego State and Florida Atlantic in the Final Four. The narrative was the world is flat. There's complete parity now. Look in this, whatever, whether people liked it or not. But, there are two separate entities. And again, one data point doesn't make a trend. So last year we had 4 number ones make the Final Four, as you guys know, but that happened in 2008. So what do we say about 2008? Everything was screwed up then. There were no Cinderellas. It's just 1 year.
Jay, you've had the pleasure of seeing a lot of the top contenders over the last couple of weeks. And we can talk about UConn in a moment, but I just want to deal first with Duke, Michigan, Arizona and Florida, and the way in which those coaches were able to sort of put these rosters together, either high-profile freshmen, in the Michigan case, having returnees and an unbelievable portal class that fit together. What's your view of the way each one of those have been assembled to be title contenders?
Well, I mean, Duke isn't doing a whole lot different than they've done in years past. They're sort of in the one and done business. So they've got young superstars, and then they put experienced role players that are around them that are willing to do, willing to make a sacrifice. And I think Michigan has a little bit different, but they've taken some high profile transfers like Yaxel Lendeborg and Elliot Cadeau, and then they've got some returnees, but they've got more experienced players. Florida's got players back that played for the national championship, and then they brought in a couple. They had to replace the best backcourt in the country last year, maybe the best backcourt the SEC's ever seen with those four guards that they had, and so they had to bring in a couple transfers to round that out, and went from being a backcourt oriented team now to a frontcourt oriented team. But teams do it differently, so there's no one way to do it. So I haven't seen like anything where I'm going, all right, well, this guy's put his roster together the right way, and this guy's done it the wrong way. I don't think it's any different, with regard to rosters than it's ever been. And everybody's got they're dealing with the same variables. So when some coaches say, well, it's so hard to put a team together because you don't have closeness and everything, then another coach has a team full of transfers that have never played together and makes them close. So they're all dealing with the same thing. It's just who does it the best.
Well, we love that variability. That's what makes college basketball so interesting. Well, you mentioned Miami of Ohio, which could turn out to be one of the most fascinating at-large conversations that I can remember. First of all, a lot of people are kind of glancing over, well, they're undefeated, they should be in. Well, if they're undefeated, they're going to be in because they'll be an automatic qualifier. But at this point in the season, they're down to the last two regular season games. In your view, how many losses can they take between now and Selection Sunday and still get an at-large bid? And maybe if it's a different question, how many should they be able to take? And I want to add that when people talk about their poor schedule, they have not played a single quad one game. They've only played one quad two game. A lot of people say, well, it's not fair because they're trying to make a good schedule and nobody wants to play them. But the committee, I don't know, can play that game. So where are you with Miami of Ohio?
I don't. I'm all good with whatever any coach says, whatever they have to sell to their people and try to sell to the public. I'm fine, but I don't buy that they can't get better games than they have. But they're going to get in. Like if they lose, they're going to get in. The committee's not going to let 29-0. There's never been a team with 29 wins not make the tournament. So they're gonna get in. And they should. I mean, there's space for it. It's not that big of a deal. The only problem I have with it is sort of the old school notion that, that somehow the mid-major kids deserve it. And first of all, none of them are kids. They call it men's college basketball. It's not boys college basketball. None of them are kids. But some people say, well, these kids deserve it, whereas the Big Ten team or ACC team or SEC team that took 8 losses don't deserve it. And I don't buy that argument either. I believe that the NCAA tournament is as fair as you can get as far as inclusion goes. If you don't win your automatic bid, then you got to go in the pool with everybody else. And they take the best teams out first. And how much fairer could somebody want it? But now sitting here saying, do I think that Miami is better than pick any bubble team? Do I think they're better than UCLA? No, I don't. But they're going to get in, and the committee's not leaving them out. I'm really confident of that. I'm not positive because they haven't had the meetings yet, but I'm pretty confident that they're going to make it. And given the size of the tournament, I'm cool with it. Now, if I were on a major college team that's better and gets left out, I'd have another thing to say. But the global view, I think they're going to make it.
Jay, for years, you've advocated rightfully for change, and then change happened, and it's still a little clunky, obviously, but the product has been great for a number of different reasons. And part of it is obviously the retention of players that aren't chasing, potential money elsewhere when they can obviously earn it now to some extent, obviously in college basketball. What are some other factors that you think have made, the quality of play and the competition at the high level so much better over the last 2 seasons?
I think competition across the board is better. I think a big part of it is that players now have choice. So you're seeing, even though they're not compensated for the level of their value because they're still limited to whatever rev share money the school is willing to pay them plus NIL, and that's not their real value. Now they can have the opportunity to seek out a better opportunity for themselves. And it's not always about money, but money is now a variable.
Yeah, that would be a great way to thread the needle. So these things are very difficult to predict, obviously, Jay. If I had to guess, I would say more likely than not, this will be the last time the NCAA tournament has 68 teams in the field. I sense momentum towards expansion. It's far, far from a done deal. We know they're not going to even address it or study it until after this tournament is over. The prevailing model, most likely model, would be going to 76, which means 6 games Tuesday, 6 games Wednesday, and then you start with the 16 on Thursday. Are you in favor of this? Are you against this? And perhaps more importantly, how strongly do you feel about your opinion?
I don't care because they're going to do whatever they want anyway. So I've given up on caring. And one of the reasons I don't care is because there's one immutable fact about the NCAA tournament. It is idiot proof. And with all the idiots we've had trying to change it over the years, they haven't been able to screw it up. So I'm not worried about it. We had a bye in the first round because there were not 64 teams. I think there were only 54, something like that, or 48. Maybe it was 48. And then I played in the first 64 team bracket in 1985, and it fit great. So it's always expanded, but it never expanded because more players deserve the experience. It expanded because there were too many good teams that demanded that it get bigger. I'm not sure we have that yet. I don't believe we do.
I was going to say, I mean, it sounds like you're opposed to it, but you're not like dying on the hill. But if it was up to you, there would be no expansion. It sounds like this is what you're saying.
If it was up to me, we wouldn't have gone past 64. But you guys know the reason for that. It's because of it was because of conference realignment, and somebody was going to be left without a chair, so they had to expand it. And then they, like typical of the NCAA, they call that, they call Dayton the first 4, and it's 8 teams. And then they have the final 4, and it's 4 teams, and none of it ever makes any sense. And they don't want to make anybody feel bad, so they called it the opening round or whatever. All this stupid things.
Remember when they tried to call that the first round, and then the round of 64 was the second round? That was the worst.
Yes,
which made it seem like everybody that played after that got a bye.
Right.
And it was, we're trying to make everybody feel good about stuff. And look, at the end of the day, my view is this is the national championship. It's not a postseason banquet where everybody, waits in line to get something to eat and we all praise each other. It's a national championship event. It's supposed to be hard to get into. And the more teams we add, look at if whoever the media partner is at any given time can clear the inventory, great. But, every bracket that people fill out, none of what happens before the first Thursday of the 64 team bracket matters. So like the public doesn't care. And so I don't think this is worthwhile. But if they're going to do it anyway, and it won't ruin it. It will not ruin it. That's impossible. So I don't think it's worth even getting in a sweat over.
For the record, Seth, maybe I'm naive. I'm not convinced it's a done deal, but we shall see.
No, it's definitely not a done deal.
I know.
You'd agree it's more likely than not, though, right?
Yeah, but I'm not convinced yet.
Okay.
100%. Back on
Oh,
the
they're
court.
going to do it. They're going to do it because, it's like they keep talking about football. Look at all the teams that go to bowl games. All those bowl games are exhibition games. They're not going to take the college football playoff to 32 teams. We've still got the NIT and all these other tournaments that are the same thing as bowl games. Who says we have to, why do we have to expand the NCAA tournament when all these other opportunities to play exist if you want to play? To me, it doesn't make any sense. But if things that didn't make any sense were cut off from the NCAA's decision making, things would be really good. But it's not, and they do a lot of things that don't make sense.
Back on the court, Cameron Boozer is the favorite now for National Player of the Year. You've seen so many great players come through Duke, and I'm not trying to compare here, but just what has elevated Boozer to the level where he more than likely will win the award?
He's going to win it. His high level consistency is, it's hard to wrap your head around. I've never seen a freshman class like this. We've had other freshman classes that you could compare to the top 5 or something like that, and maybe they're as good or better, but there's never been one 20, 25 deep like this. Nobody's been as consistent at a high level and as productive in all the important categories as Boozer has been.
Well, Jay, I'd like to believe that the Hoops HQ show is also idiot-proof. Andy and I think are the living expressions of that. You've definitely raised the level.
I'm proving that.
Yeah,
that.
I think the three of us are definite evidence of that. Look, Jay, I've known you a long time. I'm so grateful for your time today, your friendship. March is here, and let's just have fun and watch the game. So thanks for being with us. We'll look forward to watching you the rest of the season, and thanks for being on the Hoops HQ show. All right, back with Andy Katz, wrap it up on the Hoops HQ show with our parting shots. Andy Katz, fire away.
I got 2 from the Big Ten. First off, Price Sanford, the transfer from Iowa at Nebraska. Sanford is a candidate for Big Ten Player of the Year. He's been that good for the Huskers. He's right there with Yaxel Lindenberg from Michigan and Keaton Wagler from Illinois. Point number 2, flowers to Nick Martinelli. What an unbelievable career he has had at Northwestern. He ended up having the buzzer beater to beat Oregon on his own bobble day. Bobblehead Nick Martinelli with a little push shot, got the buzzer beater. What a great career at Northwestern.
You're a Northwestern dad. Can you give me one of those bobbleheads? I got to get a Nick Martinelli bobblehead. I mean, what am I doing?
I'm going to try.
I'll put it right next to my sister Jean bobblehead. On Saturday night, St. Mary's beat Gonzaga in Moraga. It's the last regular season meeting between those two teams as conference teams. They have had one of the great all-time conference series in the West Coast Conference. Next season, Gonzaga's going to the Pac-12. I know that Mark Few is a big audience member of the Hoops HQ. Mark, you got to play St. Mary's every year. We got to have a home-and-home series in perpetuity and no neutral site nonsense. You got to go on campus, Moraga and the Kennel, year after year. I make the rules. It's March, everybody. March Madness is not coming. March Madness is here, and we are covering it all over the place on Hoops HQ and, of course, on the Hoops HQ show. Thanks to Jay Bilas for joining us. Thanks to my great friend, Andy Katz, for joining me again. A lot of great conversations to be had the rest of this month. For Andy Katz, I'm Seth Davis. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the Hoops HQ show.